Hello Chipmunk and Chipette fans, my name is Grandy Tamayas, and welcome back to another installment of Alvin and the Chipmunks Elaborations. Today's topic will be, should the franchise focus more on original songs over cover songs? So, one of the longest running stigmas about this franchise is that aside from their most popular works like the Chipmunk song, Alvin and the Chipmunks songs are just regular songs by popular music artists, just pitched up, which isn't even close to true. I'd say the franchise has had a pretty healthy mix of original and cover songs, in fact, probably more so the former for a reason I'll mention later. Dissecting this stigma, let's start with how the cover songs are made. Believe it or not, making a Chipmunk cover is not as simple as taking the original song and speeding it up times 2. With that, you'd only get a song that's half the length. Or if you just pitch them up while keeping the same length, like anyone can do nowadays, yes, you are raising the pitch of the artist singing, but you're also raising the pitch of the instruments. What the creators of Alvin and the Chipmunks do is, they have the instrumental separate at first, either from the real song if they have access to it, or fabricated to sound like it, like a lot of the 80s covers. Then they have singers who perform the lyrics, which they speed up to create the Chipmunks' singing voices. However, as anyone who's tried creating Chipmunk voices in Audacity knows, pitching up a voice performed at regular speed
results in it sounding kind of like an alien.
Which is why the singers for official Chipmunk cover songs have to sing at half speed, which, believe me, is harder than it sounds, similar to how the normal talking voices are also done at half speed. This is how Ross Bagdasarian Sr. created the singing voices for the original version of the Chipmunks. By using a special tape recorder that could change speeds, he recorded himself talking or singing slowly, then playing it back at double the recording speed. I know it sounds simple, but this was state-of-the-art back in 1958. It also explains why, whenever the Chipmunks talked in the Alvin show, their speech was stilted a lot of the time. This was all new, and the technique had not yet been perfected. As a demonstration of this, I have 2 audio samples here. I want you to hear both of them unaltered first. This is my alien voice, and this is my Chipmunk voice. Alright, so the one on the left, we're going to do a simple pitch up of. You go to Effect, Pitch Tempo, change pitch, apply, then this one, let's see, pitch tempo, change speed and pitch, and it doesn't necessarily have to be times 2 or like changed by 100%. Just find whatever works for you. In my case, sweet spot is about 75, so I'm going to change that. And then let's play this from the beginning again.
This is my alien voice, and this is my Chipmunk voice.
Alright, so hear the difference? Yeah, that's how the Chipmunk voices are made properly. Now, I know there are a lot of YouTube channels who do just simple pitch-ups of popular songs as Chipmunk versions, and it's something that Bagdasarian Productions themselves have acknowledged.
So I wanted to ask you that, when you go to YouTube, if you type Chipmunks, you're going to see every hit song has been chipmunked. Yeah. It's like turned into a verb, which is basically speeding up the voice and what have you. What are your thoughts on it? Is it neat or is it frustrating because it could dilute the brand?
Well, it doesn't dilute. We don't worry about that. But if they're done with the intention that is goodwill and whatnot, and with good humor, we love it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're used, and I'm sure you've seen some of those, that are really kind of horrific, and those we unfortunately stop as often as we can find.
Sure.
So, but for the most part, we take it as a compliment that I think it's intended.
And I don't mean to offend anyone who likes or even makes these kinds of covers. In fact, I know quite a few people in the fandom who do pitch-ups, and I've even played around in programs like Audacity from time to time just to have a proof of concept of songs that I think would sound good if the Chipmunks covered them officially. I'm only trying to say that there has been a general misunderstanding of how these songs, and especially the Chipmunk voices, are made, whether it be covers or original songs. Regardless of how they're made, though, the other part of the stigma, that Alvin and the Chipmunks is unoriginal because they do cover songs so often, is also pretty harmful to the image of the brand. For one thing, I don't see why it's become such a big problem for people after the live-action movies came out, when the Chipmunks have been doing covers since nearly the start of the franchise. In fact, there's an entire album dedicated to covers of songs by the Beatles, and Ross Bagdasarian Sr. even got their permission beforehand. Cover songs became even more prominent when the franchise got revived in the 1980s. In fact, it's how they got revived. A disc jockey named Chuck Taylor had sped up the Blondie song Call Me and claimed it was by the Chipmunks. This sparked a demand for more chipmunkified songs, so Ross Bagdasarian Jr. and Janice Carmen were contacted to create a real chipmunk cover of Call Me. And along with other songs, this led to the creation of the album Chipmunk Punk in 1980. This ushering in of cover songs by the Chipmunks also led to the creation of the Chipettes, in order to widen the scope to covers of songs by female artists.
Well, it was in the 80s, and we were doing a lot of the Chipmunk covering a lot of, songs by male artists, and I wanted to do female artists. So after putting the Chipmunks in dresses as many times as I possibly could, I had this epiphany. Wait a second, girl Chipmunks.
Then as the Chipmunks' second animated series in 1983 came around, covers just came flooding in. Songs by Michael Jackson, ZZ Top, Bruce Springsteen, The Go-Go's, Madonna, Creedence Clearwater Revival. If it was a band or artist from that era, you name it, they probably covered at least one of their songs. Okay, that's hyperbole. I can actually name a bunch of bands and artists who have never had one of their songs covered by the Chipmunks or Chipettes. Some I can understand if they have too many lyrics that are too mature for the target audience, but if there's one band that I think would be just tame enough, it would be Rush. Like, I could easily imagine songs like Closer to the Heart, Time Stands Still, and Limelight as Chipmunk covers. I might be biased, though, since my dad's side of the family loves Rush. Speaking of my dad, the Chipmunks were partly responsible for introducing me to a lot of music from his era, because honestly, I was never really a big music guy prior to when my obsession with the Chipmunks started taking off as a teenager. For example, around that time, this was in 2015 or 2016, I had discovered the aforementioned Creedence Clearwater Revival. The Chipettes covered Proud Mary in the episode Going Down to Dixie, while the Chipmunks covered Bad Moon Rising in the Go to the Movies episode where they parodied Star Trek. And it turns out my dad owned a set of CCR Greatest Hits CDs, but he never listened to it, so when I did and he noticed that I enjoyed it, he kinda just gave it to me. Thanks, Dad. I'd also argue that a few of these Chipmunk/Chipette covers actually sound better than the originals. Now, I'm not going to play any of them for risk of copyright, if that wasn't obvious already, but you can search up these songs and their Chipmunk covers after you're done watching this video and judge for yourself. But in my opinion, Girls of Rock and Roll used in the Chipmunk Adventure is a prime example of what I mean. Most people assume that it was created for this film, but it was actually created for a 1986 film called The Malibu Bikini Shop. For as obscure as the Chipmunk Adventure is to most of the general public, this song is more associated with that film than the one it actually debuted in. And that original song was already a banger, though I do prefer how the Chipmunk version features guitar riffs more prominently early in its instrumental. And all that's not to mention the albums in the late 80s to mid-90s, including several cover songs that weren't in the show. My favorite album from that time is Born to Rock, which has some killer tracks. A few of these I also prefer over the originals like You Keep Me Hanging On and Venus. Diamond Dolls and Girls of Rock and Roll from the Chipmunk Adventure are also reissued in this album, and I think they were chosen to complement the other songs since they also have the same upbeat 80s pop vibe to them. You'd have to listen to the whole thing to know what I'm talking about. Also, can we talk about how amazing the artwork on this album is? It's glamorous and gritty at the same time. It just gives me a dreamlike feeling when I look at it. Wait, who made these? Andy Gaskill, you did a great job. I can only imagine what Bagdasarian must have wanted versus what they got. Remember, this is an album for a kids franchise. Don't worry about putting too much effort into the art on the record sleeve. Okay, sure, whatever. Seriously, between the vocals, the song choices, and the artwork, they cooked with this album. However, the problem with cover songs is that if you're the creators of Alvin and the Chipmunks, the original artists or the music publishers are going to want licensing fees before you use their songs. Sure, the performances of the Chipmunks' singing voices are all new, but the lyrics themselves belong to the artists or publishers, even if they change one or two words to make the lyrics kid-friendly. Back in the 80s, those songs were relatively new, and the fees didn't cost very much. But fast forward to 2024, those fees are now more expensive, sometimes upwards of tens of thousands of dollars. And so for most of the 80s series, Bagdasarian has been unable to reacquire the rights to those cover songs, hence limiting the episodes that have gotten re-released on DVD. Janice Carmen even confirmed this in the Saturday Morning Cartoon Rewind interview. It's also why for some episode releases on DVD, like the Chipette story in the Glass Slipper collection, the cover songs used in them got replaced with original songs. In that episode's case, the Chipette covers of New Attitude by Patti LaBelle and The Neutron Dance by the Pointer Sisters were replaced with two original Chipette songs called You Are Beautiful and Just Keep Dancing. I'm not sure if these two songs were created specifically for this DVD release, but they haven't appeared anywhere outside of it. This DVD was released in 2013, and the CGI series would have been in development at this time. I assume they would have been created or repurposed for that, given that the sound quality is very similar, but that never happened in the series. And who knows if we'll ever get a definitive answer to that question. As much as I like the replacement songs for the Chippette story and would like to hear full versions of those someday, I much prefer the cover songs for consistency with the audio quality of that era. And I imagine that without repurposing songs from or for the CGI series, it would have been difficult for Bagdasarian Productions to come up with new songs for the vast majority of episodes which originally contained cover songs that they can no longer use. That might even be why they stopped doing DVD releases shortly afterwards. It is worth noting that the 6th and 7th seasons of the 80s show, when it was rebranded as The Chipmunks, had comparatively fewer cover songs, yet not a lot of those episodes got re-released, so there are probably other factors than just the music. Like the industry's shift in streaming over disc media, Bagdasarian's shift in focus to the production of the CGI series, the fact that the 80s series in general just is kind of passé, and so there's not a lot of public interest outside of the core fan base, and maybe the fact that some episodes have questionable moments, but I digress. The point is, I don't think Bagdasarian can afford the licensing fees, and even if they could, they likely wouldn't see a net positive return on investment due to the 80s show just not being very culturally relevant nowadays. A lot of the kids who watched it back in the day are probably in their 40s, maybe even 50s now, like my dad, and with the attention span of today's younger audiences, I don't think that the demand for a re-release will be strong coming from them. So the 80s series will likely remain in limbo for the foreseeable future. Which is really unfortunate. Like, I understand why royalties exist, but I don't see how re-releasing older Chipmunk cover songs is going to negatively affect the original artists. Honestly, I think they'd be even more benefited by people discovering that the original exists because someone else covered it. Again, like I explained with how I discovered several artists through Alvin and The Chipmunks. And I'd especially like if full versions of those Chipmunk cover songs were available too, besides just the 30-second to 1-minute versions used in the episodes. I don't know for sure if full versions of every cover song were ever made, but hopefully if they were, they still have master prints still intact or converted to digital on some hard drive. There's even stronger reason to believe that full versions of every CGI series song were made besides just the ones that got full versions on albums. I mean, I doubt they had planned beforehand which songs they were going to put on albums, and so made all of them in case they were going to do more. Plus, Bagdasarian had hired other songwriters like Awkward Marina, who would have at least written full-length versions. It's also worth noting that a few songs on these albums actually predate their debut on the show. For example, the album Nuts to You was released on September 22nd, 2017, and included the song My Favorite Sweater from The Gift before that episode aired in the US on November 2nd, oddly before anywhere else in the world. As you've probably guessed by now, the decision to have the CGI series create its own songs was done to avoid the issue that befell the 80s series. And so Alvin and The Chipmunks features no cover songs, with the lone exception being Bad to the Bone in the episode A Rose by Any Other Name. And yet the show only got 3 albums. We're the Chipmunks in 2015, which had 17 songs if you include the Target exclusive version, the aforementioned Nuts to You in 2017 with 12 songs, and YOLO, God I hate that name, in 2019 with a whopping 21 songs. That's a total of 50 songs, which when divided by the 3 albums that were released, means that there were on average 16 2/3 songs per album. I'll just round to 17, which is exactly the number of songs on the series' first album release. While 50 songs across those 3 albums may sound like a lot, it's really only a fraction of all the original songs in the series. There were a couple episodes with more than one original song, and some that were sung entirely by humans. But when you consider that every episode has at least one, that's over 260 original songs, meaning that over 4/5 of the music in the series has never gotten released on albums. Which is outrageous, since cover songs were nerfed to near non-existence specifically to avoid this. To make matters worse, We're the Chipmunks was the only one to get a CD release, but a few months after YOLO was released, all 3 albums were mysteriously removed from all digital platforms. Why? Honestly, with how unpopular the series became, at least stateside, and legal accessibility of it on streaming services often being spotty, they might as well have just used covers. On second thought, that'd be a bad idea, since most of today's music sucks. Dare I say, the original songs for Alvin and the Chipmunks are better than 95% of what the record labels are putting out these days. That's in my most definitely biased opinion, of course. And that's the situation with cover songs up to now. Oh wait, I neglected to talk about the live-action movies, which also introduced me to some older songs and their artists. For example, Dead or Alive's You Spin Me Right Around, and You Really Got Me by the Kinks. But unlike the shows, there's no imminent threat of the movies themselves falling out of circulation due to those covers, since they're now owned by Disney, who can afford the licensing fees. I also want to mention here that the movie video games, especially the 2007 one, also have some really good cover songs exclusive to those. Like, they did not have to go this hard. Just look at this list. Video Killed the Radio Star, You Really Got Me, again, Blitzkrieg Bop, It's Tricky, I Fought the Law, and as I mentioned if you saw my previous video, All-Star. But that's not the only Smash Mouth song they covered in this game. They also did Walkin' on the Sun, which infamously included the Chipmunks invoking the name of H-E double hockey sticks. And if you think that's crazy, the Chipmunk cover of Bruno Mars's Uptown Funk in Road Chip replaces liquor with water, but keeps the mention of white gold. If you know, you know. I mean, I understand why they omitted the liquor part, but they literally showed Suggs getting drunk off of moonshine in this movie. Man, Road Trip had some unhinged moments. So, in my opinion, are cover songs inherently a bad thing? As a concept, certainly not. I think for some people, especially the Movieverse fans, there's always going to be an appeal to high-pitched versions of any song, and I don't understand hating on those fans or Alvin and the Chipmunks as a brand simply for that. Especially when there's a misunderstanding as to what it takes to make a Chipmunk cover. A lot of them I personally really enjoy just as much, if not more, than the originals, and I think it also goes to show that the creators have a good taste when picking these songs out. And I'm sure for those of you who were like me, it also gave you an appreciation for older music as we ourselves have gotten older and use the topic of music as an icebreaker when we meet new people. On a side note, I did take a music appreciation course in community college, which dealt with more classical music, so one of the examples I brought up in one assignment was the opening theme of The Chipmunk Adventure by Randy Edelman. And recognizing my liking of the Chipmunks, my professor later put Alvin and the Chipmunks' Shake Your Groove Thing as a joke option on one of the exams. As far as the future of Alvin and the Chipmunks covers is concerned, my guess is that the future TV shows will stick to mostly or entirely original songs to avoid the licensing and copyright issues. But if we get a movie reboot in some fashion, it's almost a guarantee that there will be plenty of covers, since movies have bigger budgets to work with, and most of them use licensed music anyway. Of course, I would want more covers outside of that, like the movie tie-in games and albums like Undeniable had. In truth, I do think that we've gone too long without a regular inflow of new Chipmunk cover songs, and it's something that I hope changes with the development of the next new project to come out of this franchise. Whatever and whenever that be. Hopefully soon, because it's already been over a year since the end of the CGI series. While we are starved of content in general, we're starved of cover songs most of all. But feel free to let me know in the comments, what's your position on if or how prevalent Chipmunk cover songs should be in this franchise? If you do enjoy them, what are your favorite ones? And what other songs would you like the Chipmunks to officially do covers of? I, for one, would love those Rush songs that I mentioned, as well as The Touch. Don't forget, if you want to follow me outside of these videos, you can follow me on Twitter or join my Discord server, which will both be linked in the description. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed, have a nice day, and thank you for your time.